Hello, everyone. I'm here to answer this week's question about how we gather and use data to evaluate student progress. This is something that I think every teacher does. I think it's inherent to the teaching process. Every time we have any kind of assessment as teachers, we're collecting data to measure students' progress. The challenge of that is to collect the right kind of data that can be valuable and analyze it in a way that it's giving us actionable information about how the students are doing and possibly how we could change our own teaching methods to help them even more. This is specifically something that we've been working on at my school at an institutional level this year. We have a new school-wide policy of collecting summative assessment data 4 times a year and then inputting it into a centralized computer system and analyzing the data, both in quantitative and qualitative ways to see what information we can get out of it. Um, every department is doing this together, and it looks a little bit different for each department. For example, since I teach history, there tends to be a lot of long writing and a little bit of subjectivity in our assessments, and so our data is going to look quite different from math or science departments, to name two subjects whose assessments tend to be largely multiple choice questions with one objectively correct answer. What we've done to overcome that difference is to input all of the different criteria on our rubrics into their own separate data points for all of the essay questions that students do. That way we can nail down how many students are struggling because of writing versus how many failed to remember the history content that was taught in the class versus some of the historical critical thinking skills that we want to test them for on that question. Overall, this method of data collection is helpful because we can look at it from multiple angles. For example, we can look at individual questions and see how many students missed it. That way, if a lot of students who did well overall missed one question, we may know that it's a bad question, it's unclearly worded, something like that, and then we can change it on our end. We can also pull up an individual student's assessment data across multiple subjects and see if there is consistency in the skills that they're underperforming on. For example, if we see a student struggling with writing questions on their history assessment and we look at their data from English and we see a similar pattern, then we know that their writing skills are probably the root of the problem that's affecting their performance in multiple subjects. We also do some case studies of students who are performing poorly by trying to pinpoint the specific skills that they're lacking through comparison with their other subjects. That also involves interviews with the students and with their parents, which are not done by me, but by the head of our department. Hopefully by doing this, we can find some consistent patterns where multiple students who are struggling are not having their needs met in the same way, and then we can figure out what that is and change our approach to correct the issue. Um, However, like I said, this is a new system that has only been implemented this year, meaning that we only have data for one semester so far. So we're still in the process of making some tweaks to the system and figuring out the best way to collect and use all of that data. But already it has been useful for some things, for figuring out exactly where a student's shortcomings are and how best to present that and make suggestions during parent-teacher meetings and things like that. So that's how I've been collecting and using data on the job. And I imagine that I will have more insight about that as the year goes on and we continue to figure it out and refine that process.